And I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Move on my. Okay, so welcome to this fourth AbSPORU Patient Engagement Learning Series session, Navigating Knowledge Synthesis, Literature Reviews and Beyond. We're very fortunate today to have with us Alessandra Paolucci, a PhD student at the University of Calgary. And because this is hosted by AbSPORU and AbSPORU, we work out of the University of Calgary. We'd like our land acknowledgement to reflect that we are grateful to work and play on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta, and that the city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Districts 5 and 6. And we had this little welcome, just if you were comfortable to put where you're calling from, your role in health research, and what inspired you to attend today. And please feel free if you have any questions or anything you'd like clarity on as Alessandra moves through the presentation, you're welcome to put your comments in the chat. Otherwise, we'll have a time at the end for questions and answers. Thank you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Alessandra.
Thank you, Ingrid. Share my screen. Can everyone see that? Okay, good. So hello, everyone. It's wonderful to virtually meet you all, and thank you to Ingrid and Amber, and also the AbSPORU's patient engagement platform for having me today, inviting me to be here with all of you. I'm looking forward to our discussion together today. Before we begin, I just wanted to share a little bit about myself. I am currently a health services PhD student at the University of Calgary, and I do have a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology. My research will be focused for my PhD on using a patient-oriented research approach to find out why the needs of family caregivers within an advanced lung cancer palliative care context remain unmet. And I'm also looking at other healthcare team members' needs to be able to support family caregivers in their supporting of the patient. So just to add to what Ingrid shared on the screen, if you would like to add a little bit about your academic background, your experience with knowledge syntheses, if you do, and if not, that's okay. And then any current research that you might be beginning or doing right now.
Hey, my name's Amanda. I am in my final year of undergrad, but I'm more of a mature student. I'm 32, so I'm currently doing research on ACEs and quality of diet, just for my Bachelor of Science. And it's my final research project that I'm really excited for. But I haven't had a lot of experience with literature reviews in the past, so I'm excited for that, to go over everything. Thanks.
Thank you, Amanda. It's wonderful to meet you, and thank you for sharing about yourself. We will hopefully go through at least what you are hoping to gain from today. So with that, the goal of our session is to discuss the steps in choosing, developing, conducting, and writing up a knowledge synthesis. And so here is just an overview of what we will be discussing together in our session. And we will go over some of the types of knowledge syntheses and go over some foundational knowledge about knowledge syntheses. We'll go over the steps and then how you yourself can start and where you can start with what resources. And with that, we will also work through an example together that actually with a review that Ingrid and I did together, we collaborated on a couple years ago. And then we'll end with questions and hopefully time for a discussion. So to begin, I think it's important that we define knowledge. Knowledge can be defined as facts, information, and skills. And knowledge is really the understanding, awareness, and familiarity that can be gained through lived experience, study, or investigation. And knowledge can evolve, build on prior knowledge, be shared, be contextual, or depend on a situation, and can be tested or validated. Synthesis involves integrating or combining separate ideas or information into one through critical thinking, which can provide new knowledge or new understanding. So before we talk about what a knowledge synthesis is, I think it's really important to first talk about knowledge translation. So knowledge translation is a dynamic and iterative process that includes synthesizing, disseminating, exchanging, and applying evidence-based knowledge. Essentially, we are always seeking to learn new things, synthesize, share, and apply what we learn. So knowledge translation is applying what we know into what we do. And learning new things is great, but if we aren't using what we learn to try to improve a process or a system, ultimately people's lives, then we aren't closing the gaps from knowledge into practice like we set out to do from the beginning. And closing these gaps already takes an average of 17 years to do. So on the screen, I have included the knowledge to action cycle, which shows the process of how we conduct individual research studies on a topic, and this falls under knowledge inquiry. We synthesize what we learned from a body of knowledge and evidence, and then we work on determining what area needs further study and what strategies we can implement into practice with the knowledge we already gained. So research builds on existing knowledge, adding to the body of evidence, which I like to imagine as an ocean where knowledge and evidence is collected and stored as it comes in. And this brings us to what a knowledge synthesis is and its purpose in relation to knowledge translation. So a knowledge synthesis is a process that systematically gathers evidence-based knowledge and then summarizes this knowledge. A knowledge synthesis is helpful because it can help explore our uncertainty of knowledge on a specific topic. It can help settle controversies from conflicting studies, and it can help us generate new hypotheses, and it can also help us bridge gaps between research and decision-making in practice. The terms knowledge synthesis, evidence synthesis, and review are used interchangeably, and they do mean the same thing. But for this, we will stick, with knowledge synthesis, just for a common term. And just one more thing about it, it is a type of methodology, which is a strategy or framework of principles that will guide a research investigation, while the types of knowledge syntheses are a method. For example, a scoping review is the tool and techniques of how we will synthesize knowledge. So now there are several different types, like I was mentioning, and these are the common ones that you would hear about mostly here. So we have literature review, systematic review, scoping review, narrative review, critical review, realist review, rapid review, and umbrella review. And these three in gray are not as common as the ones in purple. And for today's purposes, we will focus on the more common ones, but once you know these, really there are just little specific nuances that make a difference between these three and those common ones. So a literature review often forms the introduction of a piece of writing to provide the context. It does not use eligibility criteria. Instead, it gathers and summarizes all of what is known about a topic, and often critically appraises and makes connections about the literature being summarized on the topic more informally. And a literature review is often conducted to provide context and rationale for new research, or to help identify gaps in the existing literature. A systematic review, however, takes a systematic approach of looking for all evidence or knowledge on a specific topic and has a focused and narrow question. And it's often focused on the outcomes or impact or effect related to a topic. And I will give you an example of this type of review shortly, which is through the review Ingrid and I did together. And the other reviews that follow can be systematic as well. Really, they are. It's just because they all do follow the standardized steps, which we will get into in a while here. But the term systematic review does indicate this type of review, which I mentioned, which looks more on the outcomes and can be tied to meta-analyses. Scoping review is an exploration of the literature to identify what knowledge is available and seeks to answer more broad questions so that the literature can be identified and mapped. A narrative review is pretty similar to a literature review as it seeks to describe and summarize what is known on a topic. But the topic is more broad, and it often includes the author's perspectives as well. And lastly, an umbrella review is a review of other types of reviews, the review of other types of reviews on a specific topic. As there are several other types of reviews, I really encourage you to read this review article, which is just one of many other great articles or resources that provide in-depth explanations about the different types of reviews. So it can be really helpful. So now we'll just get into the general steps, and I have included QR codes throughout the presentation, so feel free to access them, as there are the references that I have for each of these slides that have one on it. So the general steps of a knowledge synthesis, mostly from systematic review, scoping review, all of those types, these are the kind of roughly 7 steps here generally. So the first step is really to formulate your research question and pick a framework that can help you form your question. There are several frameworks out there which we will go through, and having a framework will help you decide what your inclusion and exclusion criteria will be. That is what parameters will you have in place to help you include relevant literature and exclude irrelevant literature. All of this will help you to write a protocol, which is just a document that you write up to keep up with transparency and openness with your research, keeping you and your team accountable for what you said you were going to do before you carried out your review, and to ensure you are continuing to keep this openness and transparency. It's also recommended that you register your review in Prospero if it's a systematic review, or the Open Science Framework if it's a scoping or other type of review, such as a rapid review or an umbrella review that you are conducting. So I will quickly show you where to access the Prisma protocol checklist. It's a protocol checklist for the protocol. And then if we have time at the end, I can show you where you can register your Prisma protocols online. I'm just gonna stop sharing. I do have. Can everyone see this new screen? So this is just an example. This will help guide your review. but also this one is tailored more to the development of your protocol, and then there is one for your final manuscript. But here it just breaks down the steps that we are currently going through as I described the general steps. But this can be really helpful as you literally can check what you have already talked about in your protocol, what you need to still develop with your team. But here it is, I believe that's the reference I have included, but you can just look up Prisma P checklist on the, right here is the website. And you can find all the other types of checklists related to different types of reviews here on this website as well. Let me know if you have any questions. So next would be developing a search strategy, which is typically done in Medline, which is an electronic database. And that search strategy in Medline is then modified to fit other relevant databases that you want to search. And you can find a local librarian to help you out with this. And I will touch on this as well once we go through our example. You would then import the search results into a management system like Covidence, which I will also show you soon in our example. And then you screen in the system titles and abstracts and then full text. And once you have finished screening and have all the relevant literature that met your criteria, you would go through each study or document included and extract relevant information. Based on the type of study included, that is if it was quantitative or qualitative, or a mixed method study, you would use the appropriate tool to assess the quality of that study. You would then analyze the extracted data using an analysis of your choosing, and then you would report and present the results in a manuscript. I know this can or may seem overwhelming, but it can be broken down step by step to make it more manageable. So that is what we will do next. So how and where can you start? Well, there are so many books and articles and resources out there that you can go through to help you learn more about reviews. But one great place to start is by referring to the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, or CIHR's website, where they provide a guide to knowledge synthesis. It's right here with this QR code. And you can also refer, like I was mentioning, here's the Prisma, the reference here for the QR code for that. For the development of your review protocol and as a guide as you conduct your review and prepare your final manuscript. And then prior to your review, it is important that you clarify the goal of your review, which can also help to determine which type of review you will be thinking is most suitable for you and your team to conduct based on your review goal. And I recently came across this website called Write Review, which allows you to answer some questions regarding your review. And then based on your answers, it can help recommend which review would be the most appropriate. I'll leave that up there just for a little bit. And then I can always come back to it. So now let's go through an example together. This is the review that Ingrid and our team and I sought to complete, and we have it published. But we were interested in conducting a systematic review because we wanted to look at the impacts of partnering with cancer patients and their family caregivers in palliative care research, as we noticed a review had not yet been conducted on this topic. So we wanted to gather and synthesize or summarize the evidence on that topic. But it was a more narrow and focused question, and it was looking at the impacts. So you may notice that our review question did focus on specific points, which does make it a systematic review. So once you have a good understanding of your review goal, question, and objective, like Ingrid and I, you will need to choose a framework and develop eligibility criteria and potential search terms. We chose the SPIDER framework to operationalize or define our question and develop our eligibility criteria. So our sample for making up this S here were adult patients with cancer palliative care lived experience involved as partners in palliative care research. And then we use the acronym Cancer Palliative Care Patient Partners to refer to patient partners with cancer palliative care lived experience. We welcomed any study design and research type that applied a participatory approach and evaluated the impacts of collaborating with cancer palliative care cancer patient partners in the research. And so that means that our sample was the S, the P and the I was our phenomenon of interest, our D was the study design, E was evaluating what we would hope to evaluate based on the data that we would extract, and then R would be any research type that we wanted to include. And in our case, we wanted any. So here are some examples of other frameworks used to help develop your research question and determine your literature eligibility criteria. I will mention that our framework is not the typical one chosen for a systematic review because systematic reviews tend to be more quantitative in nature, but in our case, it was more qualitative focused just because of the type of literature that we ended up scanning and seeing in our preliminary searches, but that's why we chose this framework. But the PICO is what is used in systematic reviews, as it will help also with the meta-analysis, which I will get into soon. And you can see the other frameworks here as well. And then as you develop your eligibility criteria, it will also be helpful to identify the types of literature you will want to gather. And so the types of literature can include primary studies, which may be qualitative, quantitative, or mixed method studies. And for reviews that are systematic and involve quality appraisal, we tend to want to include peer-reviewed primary studies rather than non-peer-reviewed works. And then if conducting an umbrella review, you will want to include secondary research such as other reviews, meta-analyses, and metasyntheses. Meta-analyses summarize published studies statistically by combining the data across studies and are usually based on a systematic review, like I mentioned, while a metasynthesis just means it's a big qualitative analysis of the studies included in a review. So it uses more of the words to describe the data across those studies. And so this is what Ingrid and I actually did as part of our review. We did a qualitative metasynthesis. And so depending on our review question or objective for anyone looking to decide what types of literature, they might also want to include gray literature, which can include government and policy reports, conference abstracts, dissertations, and theses. And then book chapters and books can include primary and secondary research. And so also depending on the review question and the goal of your review, this type of literature can also be included. Next, you will also want to identify the electronic research databases you think would be relevant to search. And one way is to look up the University of Calgary databases or the university that you're affiliated with and that has that you may have access to those electronic databases. So if you just look up University of Calgary, I will show you right now. We have time. Just briefly here, I will show you. So here's the website. And if you scroll down, it has from A to Z, all of the different types of databases according to discipline and research focus. So Medline is the one typically used, and so you would go to M, or it might be O, depending on, because it is Ovid Medline, so it might be under both or just one of them. Here it is. So you would click it, and then you would sign in, and then you would go and arrive at the database to begin your search. And here is a list of some of the more common electronic databases that can be searched. Each database is dedicated, like I mentioned, to a specific type of literature and discipline. So for example, APA Psych Info is focused on the psychological scientific nature literature, and ERIC is focused on the education literature. And Medline does tend to be, as I mentioned, the database that is used to develop the initial foundational search strategy, and then that search is modified and translated to the other databases of your choosing. You can find a local librarian to help you out with this in the development of your search strategy and deciding on what types of literature and databases you would like to search. And the librarian can either develop the search strategy for you, with you, or they can teach you how to develop a strong search strategy. Based on my experience, I have noticed a trend in that librarians tend to want to teach and guide students in developing a search strategy and translating them to other relevant databases. And while that is important and valuable, don't be afraid to push them to lead in the development of the strategy if that is something you're looking for, because ultimately they do have the expertise on this. And although I am not an expert in developing search strategies, I just want to briefly explain what Boolean operators are in case you would like to attempt developing your own search strategy prior to reaching out to a librarian, or even while reaching out. But the and, or, and not are the common ones that are used. And so and finds records with all search terms related to a term. And so palliative care and cancer would gather everything on cancer and palliative care, not just each of those separately. Whereas or connects synonyms or similar terms with a concept. So in, like I was saying, palliative care would be separate, but related terms would also be hospice care, end of life care, or compassionate care. And so we'll pull everything up related to those. And then not excludes all records that contain the term after not. So if you had not animals, it will exclude any study that contains animals. And it will just focus on human studies. So here is an example of the search strategy in Ovid Medline that Ingrid and I developed with the support of our local librarian and team. And this is one that we then modified and translated to APA Psych Info, CINAHL, and MBase. And here you can see for palliative care, that was our one of our concept blocks, which just is based on our question. We tried to break down each concept and come up with search terms related to that concept. And then we used or to make sure we get everything related to that palliative care term, but using these synonyms. And then we did the same thing for patient family caregivers, the impact, patient-oriented research, cancer. And then here you can see we did animals, not. Yeah, it's the right way. This is how it's supposed to be. And then it excludes animals that way. Because we did 20 was our final search strategy, and we said not 21, so not animals. Once you and your team have developed the search strategy and translate it to other relevant databases, it's time for you to decide on a screening tool, which one you will use to import and deduplicate your search results from these databases. and then to help you screen titles and abstracts, upload and screen full text, and then manage the rest of your review. So here are some examples of screening tools that can be used, and a QR code here to a website that actually breaks down each tool and its advantages and disadvantages that can help you decide which tool you would like to use. Covidence is available through the University of Calgary if you're affiliated with it. And I myself have used Covidence for all the reviews I have been a part of. And so far, I really enjoy it and find it works well for what I need. We haven't used the data extraction form in Covidence, but we have used all the other features in the past. I have not used these other ones here, but that's why I have provided this reference here, just so you can take a look and decide for yourself which one will work best for you. But I do just have a short video that I can share with you for later if you want to watch it, as well as any connected videos to this one, which just shows you this management system of Covidence. You'll hear in the video that Covidence helps you to import the search results from your chosen electronic databases and then allows you to remove any duplicate articles. This will then set you up for the screening. And so feel free to take a look at this video. And if we have time at the end, we could come back, but it's just about a 3-minute video. And it will go through all the features of Covidence and just help you get started with that. And there are many other helpful resources and webinars or type videos, including YouTube videos that can help you learn the specifics of how to conduct a systematic review in Covidence, and how to develop that search strategy, navigate Covidence. And then you can also look up the website of Covidence, and they have these videos there on their website as well. When it comes to screening, at least 2 reviewers or screeners are required to ensure rigor, as they need to screen the total imported search results in duplicate. It isn't, so if you have about 3,000, both of you need to screen 3,000. And it is important for there to be a third screener who will resolve any screening conflicts that both of you can't resolve on your own. And then the team of screeners should meet regularly to discuss any screening questions or concerns that they may have. And also, it's good practice for screeners to select around 30 to 50 titles and abstracts at the outset to be able to calibrate and ensure everyone is aligned in their understanding of the review question and eligibility criteria. And this is especially important when you have multiple screeners, so more than 2. Once you have finished both screening phases, titles and abstracts, and then full text, you can begin systematically extracting key information and data from your included studies, and placing this information into your data extraction form accordingly. And when developing your data extraction form, you can use Excel spreadsheets, Google Sheets, or Covidence. I tend to use Excel spreadsheets just because we have a lot of variables and it becomes big, but it's very helpful to use Excel. And then you may also be able to create a data extraction form in some of the other screening tools I mentioned before. I just don't have experience with that, but I believe they would. After we have extracted all of the key information we were looking to extract, and usually before you begin the review, you have some variables you have in mind that you would like to extract data from and related to that variable, but some do pop up as you go through the full text and try to extract that information. So some other ones will pop up, but after we do this data extraction, then we do appraise the quality of our included studies. And for example, we can assess the strengths and weaknesses of the study design of each included study, whether the study was conducted properly, and we can assess for the risk of bias, such as whether the authors of the study followed reporting guidelines based on their stated study design. And as a side note, this is the step that the literature reviews will typically omit because they don't really follow a systematic approach. They can be systematic, but they don't typically appraise the studies. And because it is literature review is more focused on all the content related to a topic, it might be difficult to appraise all of that. That's why the critical thinking aspect comes in, where you connect and draw your own thoughts from what is related to that topic. And we can use various validated tools for systematic reviews, scoping reviews, to appraise the quality of included studies. And I will also mention, sorry, that for scoping reviews, you don't have to. For other types of reviews too, you don't have to appraise the quality. It's just that if you want them to be more systematic, it's good to appraise the quality of included studies. And so here's one tool that you can access. I have two other ones on the following slides of examples of validated tools that you can use based on the study design of your included study, the methodology, the methods, all of that. And the Joanna Briggs Institute also has many, and then ASP as well, the Critical Appraisal Skills Program checklist. This one I have used quite a bit, and it does break it down. There's a checklist for qualitative studies, quantitative studies, and mixed methods studies. There is a validated tool, and I believe it would be on this website or the Joanna Briggs. I can come back to these as well, or share these links with you after the session. That's helpful. So now here comes the analysis and synthesis stage. At this stage, the goal is to be able to summarize the flow of your literature. So the total of amount of search results from that you imported, what went to titles and abstracts after deduplication, what went from titles and abstracts to full text, and then even through data extraction, you can end up excluding as well. That it does happen, but it's important to show that flow of literature in your final in this stage, and and take a look at all of that as you summarize your findings. It's important to summarize the characteristics of your included studies. That can include even the age of the participants included in that study, also including the type of population, study design, things that are of interest, but that are characteristics of those included studies. Also, the variables that you were interested in synthesizing, that you extracted data from, those big primary variables that you were interested in, you summarize that, and then the findings across your included studies as well. So this stage involves you visually representing the data you extracted and analyzed, and drawing interpretations and conclusions from a body of evidence, which is to be used to help answer your review question or questions. After all of these steps, you would begin writing the manuscript with your research team to discuss your results and visually present your results. And then you can work with your team to decide on what journal is most relevant and fits with your review topic. Some important considerations are whether the journal has open access, and that means, does the journal publish research and make it available online to the public to access? And another consideration is the impact factor of a journal, and the impact factor tells you the number of times the average article in the journal has been cited by others in a year, and also indicates the quality of the published research. So many look for journals with a high impact factor, such as anywhere above 3.5 and up. And that's what we did with ours as well. The process of manuscript writing and journal submission is not something you have to do alone, and there are many resources and supports that can help guide you. And here are some with this one. Again, I go back to the Prisma checklist as it really is helpful for that, really from the beginning to the end. It serves as that guide of how to conduct the review, but also how to write up your review and your results. And then here is an example of a table and figure that we developed based on our systematic review and metasynthesis. And I'm showing you this as it's very important to remember that in order to help ensure we are bridging the gaps between knowledge and practice, we must report and present our findings out in the community, as this is key to knowledge translation. So as you may know, it is also important to collaborate with patients and other relevant stakeholders or individuals that the research impacts as equal partners in research. And that's really the CIHR patient-oriented research approach to research. And it can be really helpful to make sure that knowledge is quickly disseminated and translated into practice to improve the lives of individuals, communities, and systems as you use that approach. So you can definitely, in addition to your academic research team members, including and collaborating and partnering with patient partners, which can include family caregivers as well, including them throughout the review process, just will only help to strengthen your review and help make the research findings relevant and pertinent to the population you're hoping to target through that research. And so with that, thank you all very much for your time and for listening to me today and for your involvement as we hopefully begin our discussion. And so I open the floor now and invite you to ask any questions or share any comments you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't really have many questions. I think my biggest the biggest thing I wanted was help with how to compile everything. I'm using Excel right now, and there just seems to be an overwhelmingly large amount of resources out there. And so